Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today and talk about the gender gap. Diversity in tech has been an issue discussed a lot over the past few years. The numbers have been going up, but still, there's a lot that each and one of us to do to make it better. Let's talk a bit about the statistics. 50% of publicly traded tech companies in the US have all male boards. Out of all executives in the Silicon Valley, only 11% are women. If we take a look at the venture capital community, only 11% of the partners are women. And if we take a look at all the money invested in startups, only 7% of the entire funding goes to women-led ventures. If we dive deeper into the numbers of funding, out of all early-stage investments, only 13% were made in companies led by women. Out of all seed-stage investments, 9% were made in companies led by women. In 2015, 204 Bay Area startups received Series A funding. Only 16 of those companies were led by women. That's merely 8%. These numbers are appalling due to the fact that there has been a 68% increase in the number of women establishing new companies since 1990. In fact, women establish 2 times more companies than men all around the world. But still, it's very hard for them to scale their business, and only 2% of those female-led companies are able to reach over $1 million in revenues. Today, it's easier for women to receive funding. There's no doubt about that. It's 3 times as easy to receive funding as it was for women 15 years ago. But still, all male teams are 6 times more likely to receive funding than women. Europe is doing a bit better than the States. 22 of Europe's largest multinationals have increased the proportion of women in leadership positions. Out of women, 14 to 16% of executives are women, which is about 5% higher than in the States. And out of all tech-related fields, 30% of them are held by women. I'd like to go in and talk a bit about the Israel tech ecosystem. For those of you who don't know, Israel is number 1 in the rate of R&D spending globally, number 1 in the number of startups outside Silicon Valley, and number 1 in per capita investment. There are 277 multinational and R&D centers in Israel. And in fact, Israel has the largest concentration of startups per head anywhere in the world. Israel is actually a very unique test case for women in tech. For those of you who don't know, the tech ecosystem in Israel is dominated by amazing people coming out of the army service and elite intelligence units in the Israeli army. Israeli army service is mandatory for both men and women. Women do 2 years and men serve for 3 years. And the tech ecosystem is dominated also by the elite intelligence unit that's pretty famous. It's called the 8200 unit. And why is this special? Because the unit actually has an equal number of men and women serving. Women do the same type of R&D development and tech skill building roles as men do, but still the tech ecosystem is heavily dominated by men. We'd assume that there'd be more diverse teams, more women in tech, a higher number of women pursuing tech-related education as well, but that is just not the case. Some of the top high-tech Israeli companies you may know today, such as Waze, Outbrain, Wix, and Fiverr, all have a significantly less number of women. The R&D and Innovation Centers, as I said, there are 277, help the ecosystem be very unique. They breed the companies. We have companies such as Google, eBay, Microsoft, Apple, all have amazing R&D centers, and even banks establishing accelerators and incubating amazing startups such as Barclays and Citibank. There are over 80 accelerators in Israel and 60 co-working spaces. It really is a huge breeding house. But if we look at the statistics, The Central Bureau says that women make up 35% of the Israeli high-tech force. But when we dive deeper into the numbers, we notice that that's not exactly accurate. In fact, a lot of women in Israel serve in what we call supporting tech roles, which are more HR and administrative tasks. When you look at the real number, women actually make up only 26% of the high-tech force. In Israel, out of all executives in tech, women make up only 13%. Only 6% of Israel's CEOs are women, and out of all companies listed on Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, only 2% have women leading their board. I'd like to talk a bit about why the gender gap is so important, why it's important to increase the number of women in tech, before going into also the reasons of what each and every one of you can do to make the situation better. The numbers speak for themselves. Study shows that companies led by women are more capital efficient, achieve a 35% higher return on investment, and when venture-backed, bring in 12% more revenues than companies led by men. In fact, women-led companies are able to bring in 20% more revenue with 50% less funding. Studies show that companies with more women in executive roles outperform their competitors on every measure of profitability. But one more important thing to note is that by incorporating more women in tech, there'll probably be better products. And what do I mean by that? I'm not saying that the tech products out there today aren't good. They're doing amazing and they're great. But let's look at a story. When airbags were first introduced into cars, they disproportionately killed a larger number of women and children. And when looking back into the reasons why, what they noticed is that the engineering and designing teams were comprised of 100% men. It's interesting to think that perhaps if there was even one woman on one of those teams, then they probably would have thought to crash test dummies in the weight and size of a woman or a child. Another important fact to note is that women are actually much stronger tech consumers than men. They dominate all social media, except for LinkedIn. And in the States, $20 trillion of the consumer force is actually women, and they consume tech products just as well. So by incorporating more women in R&D, development, and tech-type roles, it will actually bring to the fact that we'll have tech products that are more suitable for the ones that are actually consuming them. After taking a look at all these facts, why are still 86% of venture startups don't have any women in their managements? If we take a look at the corporates, they're not doing much better. The statistics vary based on who you ask. Google says that 30% of its tech employees are women. But like I said, if you take away the supporting tech roles, the real number says 17%. Facebook is lagging a bit behind. 15% of its tech employees are women, and Twitter has only 10. So how do we shift the numbers? Now that we know that the statistics show that, women in tech can lead to better products, better revenues, they use the money better, they're just as better leaders as men are, how do we incorporate more women in tech? How do we shift the numbers? I believe that there are two key factors. The first is working on education, and the second is addressing the cultural and traditional differences in the way that women and men behave in the workforce. Education is the most important thing, in my opinion. It starts at a very, very young age, but it's something that each and every one of us in the audience today can change and have a very big impact. If you take a look at children, young children, ages of 3, 4, or 5, that are playing in the playground, you'll often notice that the boys are running around, playing rough, jumping up and down the slides, hanging upside down. And they're encouraged to do so. That's great. Take out the energy, have a bit of fun. If you take a look at the girls, they tend to play more politely, not as rough. They giggle on the side, and some of them do run, and that's fine. But when you do see a girl running in the playground, hanging upside down or jumping on the slides, playing rough just like the young boys, oftentimes she'll be told, hey, don't run too fast. Be scared. They're scared that she might fall or don't get your dress dirty. And why are these things at such a young age so important? Because young boys are socially constructed to take risks and be brave, while young girls are socially constructed to be polite and perfect. This then goes on in grade school. If you take a look at a 4th, 5th, or 6th grade class, computer class, for instance, working on a coding assignment, you'll see the boys are, coding and working their way, and girls do the same, but often you'll find a girl that's raising her hand and calling the teacher, sitting in front of a blank screen, telling her teacher she just can't do it, can't do the assignment. So naturally, a lot of the teachers will think, well, maybe she's not as good at numbers. Maybe she needs some extra help, extra time, tutoring. Maybe, this isn't the subject for her. But those that are aware, by just pressing Control X a few times on her screen, most probably you'll see how many times she almost got to the right answer, but she just couldn't bring herself to hand in something that wasn't perfect. Study shows that in grade school, girls often outperform men in science and math. But very few girls go on and study tech-related, computer science, science-related subjects in colleges and universities. Women earn 57% of all bachelor degrees, but only 18% of computer science degrees go to women. 1 out of 5 young boys plan to study computer science or engineering in a university, and only 1 in 17 young women plan on doing the same. In the general STEM education, women make up 32% of the graduates. But what's mind-blowing is that only half of those women that are studying and successfully graduating from STEM-related subjects then go on into working in the field. Why is that? Why are there so few, if their girls are just as good in math and science, why are so few going on to study that in university? And if they are successful in university and do well in school and graduate successfully, why do so few go into working in the tech force? Women deal with a lot of preconception biases, such as women who are smart and intelligent aren't as nice, or that women's success often comes due to hard work rather than skill and intelligence. And some preconceptional biases, such as women aren't as dedicated to their careers as men. But more than that, it's important to note that there are important cultural and traditional barriers in the way that women behave rather than men that don't enable them to thrive as well in the tech workforce. As Sheryl Sandberg put so beautifully in her book, Lean In, she says that women tend to attribute their success to others while men attribute their success to themselves. Often when a woman does a good job, and she gets acknowledged for it, she'll say, yeah, thank you. I had a great team. I had some people helping me. I worked really hard. I got lucky. But when you congratulate a man on his, great work, often he'll say, oh yeah, that's because I'm freaking awesome. And why is that important? Because women are less confident, and when it comes the time to promote the person, the manager thinks of who's the best at his job. If he's not aware of the cultural differences, he'll be led to believe that that man who boasts and brags about his successes is the better one to lead and to get the promotion. So we have less promotions for women. The same reasons women get less raises, less bonuses, don't negotiate their salaries. That's a whole other subject. But then comes the time where, they're ready to think of a healthy work-life balance. And children do change priorities. Childcare is very expensive. And naturally, when the time comes, and people, families need to think of who's the right person, to take on a stronger career and who's the person to stay at home or spend more hours at home, naturally the person who makes less money is the first one to leave the workforce. And that tends naturally to be the women. The second thing to note is the confidence gap. Women tend to be more self-conscious than men. They doubt their abilities. They need more outside assurance to their abilities than men do. And often people associate confidence with competence. And that's why a lot of people are led to believe that men are stronger business leaders than men. The third important thing to note is that women have a hard time stepping outside of their comfort zone and taking risks. And that has a lot to do with the way we're socially constructed from a very young age. The fourth important thing to note is the network barrier. This is something that I personally see happening a lot of times in Israel. The tech force is dominated by men coming out of the elite army units who pay it forward between themselves. As the deal flow and business development manager at Tel Aviv Capital, I work with hundreds of investment entities around the world, and I see tens of startups every week, and I notice this network barrier a lot. A lot of times I hear, hey, my friend from the Army's little brother just established a company, just founded a great company, you should meet him. Or a lot of times, hey, my cousin from the Army's friend's little sister's brother, something like that, you should meet him. And it's a lot harder for women to tap into these networks, especially since the tech force and investment community is heavily dominated by middle-aged men. Women have a harder time connecting to that. A lot of times, they connect over sports games, they connect over poker night, they connect over other activities, and women just aren't there. Another very important factor is the current company cultures in the tech force today. We notice that even though the numbers are going up, and there are women in the tech force, there are about 30% if we include the supporting tech roles, women in corporates choose to leave tech companies within their first 7 years. So these are incredible women who did well in math and science in school, went on to study STEM subjects in universities, managed to, break the barriers and get accepted into some of these leading tech companies. Why do they leave within the first 7 years? And I'll tell you, it has nothing to do with their marital status, but everything to do with the culture that these tech companies endure. The numbers speak for themselves. A survey of senior executive women in Silicon Valley with over 10 years of experience in corporates. Out of them, 90% witnessed sexist behaviors in company offsites or at a conference. This is extremely interesting. 84% of them were told at one point that they're too aggressive in the office. And 75% of women were asked about their family life, marital status, and children during job interviews. I personally haven't had one job interview where I wasn't asked about my marital status. For one employer was enough to say that I wasn't yet married. But for one who happened to be a woman, she looked down on me and said, hey, don't you want to settle down and get married soon? Aren't you afraid of the long work hours? It's a big mistake to encourage young women who want to pursue careers in tech from taking on challenging roles so early in their career, way before it's relevant for them to even think about that. If women aren't challenged in their careers and don't feel fulfilled in what they do, they won't come back after they leave. They'll choose to leave within 7 years. They won't make it forward. I'm not saying that everyone has to pursue a career in tech, but I'm saying let's not discourage the ones that do. People are very aware about the problematic culture in tech today, and there are a lot of women-focused programs out there to help women make it in tech and endure over time. About a year ago, I helped co-found WMN in Israel. WMN is a co-working space and ecosystem for female-led ventures. We take pre-seed companies and incubate them, give them all the network and things that they need in order to then succeed and make it through the tough investment process and grow their companies to have over $1 million in revenue. Out of the first 17 tech companies that were there, within the first year, over 9 got funded. I then went on to establish the Women Parliament that doesn't even focus on tech, it focuses on women and careers in general. The Women's Parliament is going to open 3 new locations in the United States later this year. What we do here is focus on the network barrier and the culture barrier. We provide women with the skill sets that they need in order to succeed in the workforce. There are other many, many amazing programs available today. One of them is Girls in Tech, which is a world amazing nonprofit available for women worldwide. They focus on encouraging women that are interested in tech to pursue their careers and to make it. They have special pitch nights and special community events focused on, helping them acquire the skill sets that they need. She Codes is one of my favorite, if not the favorite, women-focused program out there today. She Codes works with young girls in schools, in high schools, and helps them equip with the tech skills that they need in order to then pursue computer science and computer-related degrees in colleges. They've already taught more than 100,000 girls to code. There are a lot of other programs, such as Lean In Circles, inspired by Sheryl Sandberg's around the world, and in-company corporate mentorship programs that have been instituted today in order to keep women in the workforce. But what recent years have also shown us is that there have been a lot of women-focused funds that have been established, such as the Female Founders Fund, Golden Seeds, and Bell Capital. But what I'm here today to say is that the future of women in tech is up to every single one of us. It's up to you to make the change. It has to do with the way that we bring up their children and how we teach them to think. It's my dream today that these women-focused programs won't be needed anymore. That all of us, will be able to bring up our children in a place where being intelligent doesn't necessarily mean that they're not as nice. And there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. By simply acknowledging the fact that there are differences in the way that men and women behave is the first step. By thinking about that Control X on the computer and that women have a harder time dealing with things when they aren't perfect is a step. What I'd like each of you to do is to think of what you can do in your company, of how you can change the culture, of how you can call on more women to participate in meetings, how you can think when you're thinking of the person to promote that necessarily not the loudest and most boastful person in the room is the best for their job, how not to disencourage the women that are looking to broaden their career from pursuing and succeeding. We need to teach our young girls that failure is a process, that with big risks come huge accomplishments, that you must step out of your comfort zone in order to succeed. Boundaries should sometimes be broken. Rules are meant to be broken. But most importantly, you need to be brave and not perfect. Thank you.